are going to tap into the power of what, ladies and gentlemen? How many feel like you're already tapping that power, ladies and gentlemen? Tonight, we want to uncover the formula that will guarantee happiness in any moment if you apply it. Who's up for such a formula? Now, if I tell it to you, even though we're all family, some of you, by your nature as an independent soul, will have to say, I don't know if I believe. So I am not going to tell it to you. You are going to discover it, because if I tell you, you can doubt it, but if you tell me, we will clearly know it's true. We're going to uncover the formula for happiness, the formula for unhappiness, and most importantly, the formula for suffering. And then we will have a much better idea of how quickly the reality of what suffering is, the reality of what happiness is, the reality of unhappiness is. So let's dig straight into it. I'm going to do it by having you uncover. So let's uncover. I'd like you to write down, put the question up on the screen. I want you to think of an area of your life that you're really happy with. By the way, how many feel like your whole life feels pretty happy right now? Say, I. So what's an area of your life where you're really happy, or if you're British, really pleased? Okay, because I know I'm going to be there. So what's an area you're really happy, really pleased? Now, by the way, right now, that'll be easier. But sometimes when I ask somebody a question like this, they'll go, I'm not happy with any part of my life. One of the things you need to remember right now is that this brain of ours has a limited amount that it can take on at one time consciously. There's a formula called 7 plus or minus 2. It's how much your brain can pay attention to. Right now, there are millions of different forms of stimuli you can pay attention to. But your conscious mind can only handle roughly 3 to maybe 12 of those things, to give you an idea. And for most people, it's 3 or 4 or 5. And so what happens is you're not thinking about, you don't even notice the feeling of your clothing against your skin until I mention it. You don't think about your ear and what it sounds like, or the sound of your heart, or even the feeling of your heart. That's why I mention it. Because the human brain is mostly a deletion device. You should jot that down so you understand. Its first job is delete shit. Some of you are deleting shit that's really good. And you're magnifying things and distorting and generalizing things that are not so good. So think about it. You can only handle so much, so the brain's deleting most of what's going on right now in this experience. In fact, we make ourselves, if you put your feet down the ground right now, hit that ground, solid or not solid? Which one? Solid. You all know that's bullshit if you know anything about physics. What's that? Oh, thank you so much, honey. You know that, is this room moving or still? This room is moving, thank you. I'm glad we all agree with that. But every room is moving, right? What's the speed of the earth turning? So our brain would be so overwhelmed consciously if the conscious mind had to process all this. So it deletes until something teaches it this is something that matters. You know the example I always give when I say about your reticular activating system? If you buy a car, you buy an outfit, you see the car outfit everywhere. You know the one I'm talking about? Who knows what I'm talking about here? Why do you those cars and outfits were always around. Why do you see them now? Because your brain now knows it's important because you bought one, or you're wearing that dress, or you own that dress. So now suddenly, your reticular activating system, the RAS, says this is something to pay attention to. We're going to bring this into our field of awareness. Without the RAS knowing it's important, it deletes. Now sometimes you had a bad relationship, something broke up when it was really beautiful. Now when things start to get to beautiful, you look for what's going to fuck it up because you're afraid. How many follow? Because there's a trigger in there that says, I need to pay attention to any stimuli that could lead to upset because I don't want to go through that again. So the mind comes down in the form of a stimulus response in this brain, and we start deleting sometimes the good things in our life out of the survival instinct. Because remember, it's all survival software. When we say mind, let's use another one, survival software. Then it doesn't have to be out there. You can actually bring it in here for a moment. Survival software is always looking for what's wrong. So it's got a hypersensitivity. Remember I talked about the accelerator and the brake? Okay, well, it has an accelerator to fight or flight about certain things because they've been experienced in the past. And so it distorts. That's the second thing the brain does. Write it down. It distorts, it deletes, and it generalizes. That's what your brain does. Distorts, deletes, and generalizes. Without those three things, you couldn't do anything. Because if I came and I said, what are you feeling right now? Gabriel, Praveen, Rick, what are you feeling right now? Unless you could generalize, we couldn't communicate. And unless I could generalize, the syllables you put together mean the same thing for me as they do for you, which they don't, we'd have no way to even connect. So it's important to distort, delete, and generalize for the conscious mind. But all of your happiness, all of your unhappiness, and all your suffering comes from this. I'll give you a metaphor. How many have been to Date with Destiny again? So do you remember the process? I call it the 3D process, where I have you go back and remember your earliest memory. How many remember that process? And then do you remember what I had you do? I had you remember a time before your earliest memory. There's kind of an interesting presupposition there, isn't there? And because I asked that inquiry, it's inquiry. Do you get that it's inquiry? I'm asking questions, and I'm getting you to inquire. And because you ask a new question, you get a new answer. How many of you found a time before, who went to Date with Destiny, how many found a time before your earliest memory? And what you found, most of you about that time, was something you had deleted, something you had distorted, or something you generalized. And when you reclaim the truth, more of the whole, kind of like when we're doing these questions and we say, I want you to think about that. Go back to that specific moment. What were you seeing? What were you missing? You say you're upset, but what else was going on? You get new information that allows you to make new decisions. How many follow me so far? Say I. So if you and I are going to have happiness and joy, I'm going to show you the formula, but you got to know what's behind the formula is distortion, deletion, and generalization. And every person in their life has done this, and most of us distort and delete and generalize for survival software, not for what's the greatest quality of life, not for what's most fulfilling, right? Because we're letting this thing run us, because it's 2 million years old, and it's hardwired, and it's a damn good thing, because if there's a real emergency, you need this thing to take over and get you to fight or flight or freeze. And sometimes freezing does work. Depends on the situation, right? And you don't want your conscious mind to have to make that decision. But today, living in the modern world, we don't have those same stimulus. So again, what do we do responding to? What people think of us, how much money we have. Something in our head that creates that survival instinct. And by the way, when people are in survival instinct, when that survival software is going on, when their conditioning is going on, when they're reacting, do people communicate poorly or greatly? Who do you communicate to the worst when you're in survival software? Yourself. And you've been doing that for a long time and it's stuck. It's like the accelerator's stuck. And then you're braking on things that actually would make you be fulfilled. You start to blame yourself. So part of why we did this, and the second step being an identity shift, is to fucking remember what you have forgotten and distorted and deleted, that everybody does the best they can with where they are. There's no fucking way you could have done anything different than you did back then based on what you believed. And if you can just get that for a second, then suffering can end. The blaming comes from a good place. It comes from, I want to prove that I'm a good person to myself and everyone else. I am responsible. I do feel bad. But feeling bad is a treadmill you'll never fucking get off. And when you're in that place and you're suffering, who else suffers? Everyone that you care about, because anybody you care about probably cares about you. And also, then, your only choice is to get out of suffering. If I'm this rugged and you touch me with a cat hair, I'm going to be beating myself up. But there's a point where I can't handle anymore, so what am I going to do? I'm going to blame you. And by the way, if you find something to blame in a person, can you find it, yes or no? Can you find brown in any room, yes or no? Even if it's beige. Can you find red in any room, even if it's burgundy? And you're going to find what your conditioning is. Your conditioning created those behaviors you are suffered about. So if you can honestly just get to the fucking truth, to stop distorting, generalizing, deleting, then you can have freedom. By the way, when you're free, who else can you fucking free? That's the higher reason for all this. The higher reason for the things I've done in my life where I suffer the most, or why I thought I was so fucking stupid, or I fucked up, or I let down somebody I love, which is like, I can't do. I got to deliver. But what's come out of those situations, when I beat myself up, not a lot of good shit came out of it. But when I finally realized I couldn't have done anything else based on what I believed at that time. And it's true. And by the way, other people have done shitty things, even horrible things. Even these fucking people that come and kill people as a terrorist. I know this sounds crazy. I know some of you will be upset by this, but they're fucking innocent. The behavior's not innocent, but they are. They're being used by an ideology. If you believe that ideology, you would do the exact same thing. People say, why would God or the universe or energy or spirit or soul create bad things to happen? But when bad things happen, do people adapt, unify, care more, do things about more than themselves, yes or no? Do you know when 9/11 happened? I'm sorry, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but one of the greatest researchers in the world, a book you all should get, it's called The Gift of Fear. It's by my friend Gavin DeBecker. Gavin DeBecker is the greatest security guy in the world. He basically designed all the security that's been done for Supreme Court for everybody. And he knows how to threat assessment. He understands human beings at a level that most people don't. That's why we became such good friends. And one of the interesting things, I should say, is when 9/11 happened, there's a certain volume of crime that happens in New York City, and it can vary by decades by 3 or 4 or 5 or 7%, but never varies that much no matter what policies are there. And murders specifically have a certain variability. Just like seasons, they can go through, there's some winters where it's more intense and there's some springs where it's much easier. but it's measurable to such an average that, interestingly enough, for 6 months after 9/11, the death rate dropped to equal the 3,500 people that were murdered in the Twin Towers. Are you getting it? Everything is connected. Everything has a higher purpose. Now, we have free will to choose what's going on, but it's crazy. I loved the answer that Stephen gave you about the different religions, and especially about the Muslim religion, because most people who are part of Islam are not the people you hear about on TV. Not most people, like 99%. You have some people, mostly males, who are looking for significance in a world where unemployment in some areas is as much as 80%, and where what the job I can get is working at McDonald's, where somebody's telling me what the fuck to do. How's that work with a masculine male with full of testosterone at that stage of life? They'd rather fucking die than be told what to do, or have some meager earnings, which will not support anything. And so they find another model. And a model that tells them that they will be a hero, which is the story, the oldest story of humanity is the story of the hero. And in 99% of those stories throughout millennia up until recently, where all movies the hero is a female, and the guy's a weak suck, all action pictures today, it was who, a female or a male, which one? And the male was taught that if you will risk your life and you can come back and survive, you will get the most beautiful female. That is the psyche of every male around the world in every culture. Now that's become part of the female psychology, but it's not for millennia. It's not built at the same level. So what are these guys doing? They're on a mission to do good, to rid the world of the evil that all of us represent, whether men, women, or children who are just shopping or having a restaurant, lunch, or going to a concert. But there's a balance in everything. The world, the universe is creation and destruction. Creation and destruction. And there's a balance of it. And that balance is measurable. So I'm not suggesting to condone the behavior in a million years, but I have a larger understanding, and my larger understanding is there needs to be destruction where there's creation. I don't want that to happen to my family. I don't want it to happen to anybody I care about, but I know what's going to happen. My destruction is going to happen at some point. I hope it's later, not sooner. I hope when it happens, it's peaceful, not painful. But what I hope is a preference. And I can do a certain amount to affect that, but I can't control it completely. That's why I had to decide I'm going to be in a beautiful state no matter what. I want my last breath to be a beautiful state. And I want my breath between now and then to be a beautiful state. And when it's not, I just need to get this survival software out of it and realize I can awaken to a larger reality than my conditioned mind and culture has taught me. So there's a part of our consciousness that we don't usually practice day to day, but we've got, if we can find it, we can free ourselves. And if we free ourselves, we can free the people we love. But you're not going to free anybody unless you put the mask on yourself first. It's time. It's been too long. It's time. Who's with me on this? Why would we wait to be liberated, to be free, to be joyous? Why would we wait only to serve the conditioned brain, only to serve survival software? If all of us in this room, and I think we all are leaders, and I'm not saying in that dramatic way, we're parents, we're friends, we're business people, we're lovers. If we really are, then there's no greater calling for us than to stop the suffering in ourselves by saying that we're innocent and everyone else is too. That's hard, but it's fucking liberation. It's hard, but that's what leaders do. Leaders do the hard shit. Other people just go back to sleep and do what everybody else does. Remember I said the other day, what makes you a leader is if you do something that doesn't work, you get rid of it. You take the pain, use that to wake up, and you get rid of it. If the whole world rewards you for it, you still don't fucking do that. Because you know what's fucking true. And if the world doesn't reward you for doing the right thing, you keep doing it anyway. That's what makes you a leader. And if you do that long enough, others will see and follow because right action inspires. It does. Right action inspires. And if it's consistent right action, if it's right action initially, some people can think, I'm an example. There's so many people over the years think I'm some motivator, some salesman. Oh, they got so many fucking things they've thought about me over the years. And why are they projecting all that? They're projecting what they are judging in themselves. They're projecting They think I'm significant for some reason and they're not, so they're going to make sure I'm not significant. I don't even fucking know them. Ever met them, probably never will. So they're innocent. Those people who write all that shit about people. I remember one time Bonnie Pearl and I were in Las Vegas and we were looking at a concert to go to. And what's the woman from Canada that's got a great voice? She's been around for Celine Dion. Celine Dion was there. And so we went on the webs to see what songs, kind of remind ourselves what songs are really great with her. So we went on YouTube, one of songs by Celine Dion, and just say, remind ourselves, do we want to go to this concert? Just an easy way to do it real quick. It's been a long time. She was at Caesar's Palace. And underneath the song were all these YouTube comments. And the first comment was, "You filthy fucking bitch, you whore. I'm glad your baby died because you put your career first and you don't give a shit about anybody but yourself." And I remember reading this going, holy fuck. What kind of person writes that? Is there any truth to it? And why would somebody do that? Because they're beating themselves up so bad. The only way they think to stop suffering is to find somebody worse, and since there isn't one, they'll project it. And the person who wrote that was innocent. Not smart. I didn't say they're smart. I didn't say they're in their heart. I didn't say they're in their essence. But their soul's innocent. They're running their software. Honey, what'd you say?
No, and it's just good to realize and identify mind, and the mind judges. And so what's different being angry? What's different being annoyed? What's different judging? What's different if you really think about it? If I think of where my mind, when I believe my thoughts, where I will go, and the level of intensity that will happen from 0 to 100 when I simply believe my thoughts, different than when I'm navigating my life from essence or from a heart space. It is Saul to Paul. Like, it is completely a different reality of life. And so those people, besides beating themselves up, they're beating themselves up, they're believing their thoughts, they're judging themselves. And so you can only take it internal so far, and it goes external. And so the more that you can start to identify, it's like, for myself, just notice like your interior dialogue, just what your mind is thinking and believing. Listen to the thoughts. If in my own inner world, if I start to speed up, if I start to curse, I know I'm in mind. If I start to feel tension in my body, I know I'm in mind. If I start to believe I'm stressed, I'm in mind.
Because One World Academy will teach you the basic assumption that there's suffering states and there's beautiful states, and that's all it is, and make the choice and right action. But that tells you why you're fucked up. It doesn't show you how to change it. And how to change it is inquiry. Because the only way you can do it, by the way, this doesn't guarantee you she may not go back there, but she has an opportunity. It's possible if we can create an environment where there isn't the judgment. She may still do it. It might be a very small one, but for someone you love, you want to give that small chance to, right? It doesn't matter. And it's up to them to do it. You can't control another human being. But what I've always said, and Bonnie Pearl echoed a version of it just now, is you can't influence someone while you're judging them.
You can't.
That's something you want to write down and remember. And that means yourself too. There's no influence there. As soon as you're judging, your ability to influence goes through the floor. So part of my ability to influence, and you know me well enough, been around me enough, how much judgment do you see with me when someone is really going crazy? I might act it, I might use it, I might manipulate, I might do leverage, I might do a lot of things. But you've been around me enough to know there's no fucking judgment. There's not.
Inquiry is just like a living, breathing part of life now. If I'm interacting, I'm asking myself, if I walk away and I feel like, I'll go back and I'll ask myself, was I as deeply connected as I truly could be? Because we're all waiting. It's this moment. This moment is living life. This moment is being spiritual. Not somewhere in the future, what I should have done back there. You can't control. If you're thinking of yesterday, you're going to feel sad. You're going to probably beat yourself up. You're going to feel, bad about a decision. In the future, it's like, oh my gosh, it's usually fear. I have no freaking clue. And so it was like, okay, suffering, beautiful state. That felt at the beginning, it took effort. I managed it from my mind. It did not come from essence. Beautiful state in mind, it was like, okay, gosh, I'm doing this, so I'm going to do different. So I'm going to choose. There's a beautiful practice. I was like, wow, I'm going to choose different attributes here. If Tony and I got in a moment where there was, friction or something, I'd come back to a point where I'd be, okay, Tony, I'd choose a beautiful state. But truthfully, I was still hooked in my mind. I was still completely hooked in my mind, and I didn't see it. And that has been, it's like if Tony's on stage, what he's doing with you, he's inquiring. Constantly, he's asking you questions that you wouldn't ask yourself. It is the man is the master of inquiry. I didn't see it. I didn't see it when I was believing my own thoughts inside myself. So inquiry for me, I mean an alive inquiry, living inquiry has changed my complete inner reality and therefore has completely changed my life.
Our schedule, our life, our intensity, her worry, her biggest suffering, the biggest suffering is worrying that I'm going to get
Joan's
hurt.
body.
My body, because she sees what I look like after a UPW, and I look like somebody that ran a few marathons, which is what you look like, right?
Man,
I was with you at Sun Valley at the end. And
yes,
yeah, and
man, I love so dearly out here sharing this unbelievable gift with you all. Man comes off stage, my husband, I see him barely able to walk. It was hard for my mind not to project. It was hard for me not to make it wrong.
Part of the process, right? Part of the process.
And so for me, I was always thinking, oh my gosh, one day we'll get off the road. One day he won't do these events, or at least not do the UPW. I'm being honest. I'm being so complete. Of course, never. But I was believing these thoughts. When I believed the shoulds and shouldn'ts of what he shouldn't do, I suffered. Not only did I suffer, what did that make him feel like? Yes, exactly. It caused suffering in him because his beautiful gift that he's here to share, I couldn't see it. I was so worried about losing my husband. I was so worried. Here's an ironic thing.
This is before, like, all the things you now know that I've gone through in the last year, so you can imagine. So when the health department calls and wants to know, is she trying to kill me because they've got to know where the source of this mercury's come from more than anybody. They literally thought she did it because I got a large life insurance policy.
Yeah.
That's the mindset. So.
Isn't that awesome? What's spirits kind of cracked me up. I'm like, really? That's cool. What's really funny is capable, if I believe my thoughts, probably.
For free, she'd do it for free at times. I'll tell you that.
And it's so interesting, like you even think of that, like difference of conditioning and where your mind will go. I will go to a much darker place than he will go to much quicker. Much quicker. My darkness would be externalized, more aggressive, if that makes sense. His darkness would be more internal, if that makes sense.
Beating myself up.
Yes, beating himself up. And so we all know one isn't better or worse. It's just different. It's
Both
just a
suffering.
different configuration. What the heck was I just telling you?
the follow-up that I thought
Yes.
that everyone would they want me to stand up, would,
Please.
when you're in the inquiry process and
Yes.
you're living in that space right
Yes,
now,
yes,
how do you, inquiry's in the mind.
it is.
So you're in the mind here.
Okay.
How do you get into that essence, into the heart, while you're balancing, constantly reevaluating and going through that? Because, I struggle with that part of it where,
Of course, Dave.
I'm a strategic thinker. I'm a
Yes.
synthesizer, so I like my problem solving.
But you just demonstrated, if anybody watched him, he demonstrated, he goes, how do you go from, evaluating to in your heart? Because I'm a thinker, and what he just said, he gave himself an identity that makes it harder.
And this is what
I'm
the
a
mind
strategic
does.
thinker. So he's got an identity. Remember, identity, you're going to find a way to get back to your identity, even if it's not true. If you think you're a piece of shit, you're going to find ways you're a piece of shit, even though you're not.
That's actually one of my categories.
Piece of shit?
No, strategic synthesizer.
Yes.
Oh,
But
that was
a category is different than I am.
Okay.
See, using a category instead of being used by it. How many see the difference here?
Yes.
I'm many things.
Yes.
One of the things I have the ability to do is this. But once it's the identity, and you didn't say I'm 12 things, and one of them is this, right? Does that make sense?
And so you even say how I am from mind can be so limiting. If we were having an argument, and if I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm so loving. I've been with you for 17 years. I am so loving. That belief alone closed me off to actually seeing where I wasn't loving.
In the moment.
In the moment.
She is loving. In the moment.
Yes,
sometimes I'm
completely.
not, sometimes she's not.
In that moment, in that exchange, but that moment is all that's real. This moment's all that's real. So if I'm not loving here, that's the level of practice that we commit to. And so you asked me about my own experience. If it's really, really complicated, I put it on paper. And even in the beginning when it wasn't complicated, I put it on paper so I could actually see the pattern of my own thinking. And there's a pattern. I usually start at annoyed. It'll go to frustrated. It'll go to anger. It'll go to aggression. I didn't even
And
know
aggression
that.
is a soft word for that state.
Yes, absolutely. And so, the aggression you notice, or the anger you notice, it's really good, it's hot, it's fiery. But what I didn't realize is I'm just really being that level of awareness in life, it's like, oh my gosh, it starts over here. I had no clue. It's like you talk about an anchor, an impression, or a stacking. I had no clue that an annoyance stacked on top of frustration, stacked on top of anger, stacked on top of whatever it looked like. Then you meet the person you love, and they come in innocently, and I'm charged over here, believing that it's a separate context. We are all so deluded.
And
we
innocent.
Are and innocent.
And innocent.
And innocent.
And innocent. And innocent.
And innocent. Beautifully deluded and innocent, believing that it's okay to operate here differently than we operate here.
So, but once you're in the inquiry,
Yes.
you're
You
up here in the mind, how do you anchor it in the heart and
yes.
act out of the essence?
Beautiful. So in inquiry, always stay with that single moment. What happens is we tend to complicate it because the mind wants to affirm that I'm not that. And so you stick in that moment so you don't go global. That's the first.
Remember,
the first
generalize,
piece.
distort, delete.
Yes,
So what you
it's
tend
so
to do is
important.
generalize, and then once you generalize, your brain's taken over.
So
But if you go
because-
back to that moment,
Yes.
you're not generalizing. And then if you go back to that moment and find details, you'll see the things you distorted or deleted, and you'll get a closer reality that allow you to
Yes.
find a kinder way to deal with it, whether it is yourself or someone else.
We all have a place. You all have a place that's a home where you live more from essence, or an individual, maybe even an animal. It could be a dog. I mean, it doesn't even matter. Where you feel that, like, you feel that just an ease to connect, a place that could, I mean, Scotty, when he's selling, Scotty's completely in essence. And he's not even selling, he's connecting. He doesn't have a story about differently than in another area. Or, Tony on stage or myself in a different context. And so it's looking, this isn't about looking, because our core, we're all really beautiful human beings. And essence is absolutely our nature. It's just looking for the context or the moments where it's not, where mind gets entangled. It's as simple as that. And you start to notice there, and you start to clear those thoughts, and it's just like, it just expands, and it expands, and it gets easier, and it gets easier. And then every single day, it's like, wow, life is just so humbling, because you think, it's like, as soon as you think, it's like, wow, I got this, life just, boom, offers something to just completely beautifully get entangled. And so that's where it's a practice. It's such a practice. I have so much more work to do in the most beautiful way. Not even work, just awareness, just noticing. Because I actually want to live and live that free and live that connected, if that makes sense.
And what can speed this up? The process of doing it as a part of your awareness, just noticing when that tension is there, and then asking these questions yourself. Say, what's really going on here? What am I doing right now? I'm starting to suffer. Why am I suffering? Mind's taken over, and recognizing that, and then seeing the thought and going, it's just not true. That's not a unique thought. That's not an original thought. Or is it true? And when I believe that, what do I feel? How do I act? How do I treat people? How do they respond to me? All of a sudden, he's up here doing something to solve it, but not seeing what's happening here. But when he saw it, how quick did he change because he loves this woman, right? And then, what if I didn't have that thought? Or maybe what I'm not supposed to do, I'm supposed to do that. They're not supposed to do it, they're supposed to do that, so I learn this lesson, so I grow, so I'm finally free. So there's the in the moment, but then there's the other piece. And the other piece is ideals.
Yes.
Ideals is another word for your model of the world. Okay? Ideals is the part of your model of the world that you think has to be so, and if you violate it, you destroy yourself, or someone else does, you really are upset with them. And those ideals, that model of the world, if you start to find those, now you can actually pull the root up and you can eliminate 20 of these things that are happening every day, so you don't have to keep reevaluating it 50 times a day. That's the place I'm pretty excited about digging underneath it. That's the place, but you got to do it moment to moment, no matter what, because stuff will come up. But it's not the same stuff. Now it takes a hell of a lot more to really get you. As we've all grown, how many can relate in your business? Then the beginning is like little shit scared the shit out of you. And now it takes really big shit. Your threshold of control has grown. How many can relate to this here? Say I. Well, we want to do this within our own psychology. And that's why these 3 practices will give you that ultimate advantage of happiness. But you got to keep remembering, I am not mind. I am innocent, they're innocent. What am I really? I got to come back. I'm soul, I'm spirit, I'm essence, I'm source. From there, what's the belief that will transform me? What's the truth? What's the higher intent in this in me? What's the higher intent in them? What's the truth that would set me free right fucking now? And you start asking and expecting it, and what do? Like all the practices that we talked about, whether it's, the example I gave you, LeBron, or whether it's, with, what's the name, the swimmer, what's his name? Michael Phelps. They've wired their myelin. She's been wiring her myelin. I've been wiring my myelin.
Yes.
The reason someone can stand up, it doesn't matter what the fuck happens, change is done, is I've wired so many variables inside me that it happens in hyperspeed. I don't think It happens. You stand up, my brain says it's done. If you're standing up, my core belief is God's guided this moment. Now let's see how it's going to show up, right? But I feel a model that does it. So there's models that'll empower and the models that don't. And when you're happy, you're matching your model. When you're not matching your model. When you're suffering, you think nothing will match your model.
Yes.
And it's not true. It's just the mind convincing you of this.
And I'll share a really simple example. The other morning we were in London right before we flew here, so this is 3 days ago. And Tony had been on a schedule. He was, did a private event in Texas. We flew overnight, got to London that very next morning, and he did an event. That night, I love him, I care about him, I want him completely taken care of. So I'm like, you know what, we're gonna have a bath and get to bed really early and he'll get rest. Then of course there was phone calls scheduled that I wasn't aware about and I didn't even realize that they were happening. And of course they went much longer than anticipated. I think he went to bed at 4 a.m. And so the next morning he woke up, wife innocently, who loves him so dearly, sees a man who wakes up who is in an incredible amount of physical pain.
Mercury
Yes,
goes
and the
through
Mercury and
themes, right? You don't know what's
waves
hit.
almost, So I see him, different version of myself, and I got hooked. So my mind went to, he shouldn't have done the phone call. For crying out loud, why did he do that phone call? He didn't go to bed till 4 o'clock. He didn't have to do that phone call. I should have, the shouldn'ts for him, my own shouldn'ts. And I recognized my heart was starting to pound, and I was starting to feel that anxiety, that funny feeling in my body of that tension, that resistance. And then I'm like, all right, he did, and he's here. And as soon as I let go, it's so crazy, but it was as soon as I let go of the should and shouldn'ts, I was actually able, imagine a human being that's just waking up feeling that way. If I'm in my mind and I'm fearful, I'm looking at him like he's not okay. The human being that I love the most is seeing in my eyes, you're not okay. I'm meeting him innocently,
and
believing
normally
his
what's
thoughts.
happening for me is, who do I want to make happy the most? Who do I want to have no pain, no anxiety, no challenges? And I'm fine with it. I know this is part of the process. I'm going through it. But she gave me an unbelievable gift differently. It started, I could feel the tension. I could start to feel the tension in me. It's okay, all right, here we go. We're going to
He already had his own thing going on.
Yes.
He doesn't need my added to it. And it's so...
But she gave me a gift. And the gift she came is she saw the truth, she let it go, and then she brought in some beautiful music. And I'm privileged to have some incredible people that traveled with me that helped me with my body. And they came in, and it was the most miraculous, beautiful time while I was getting healed. And I'm looking around, I'm taking in how privileged I am to have these souls that I consider best friends that travel with me. I got my wife here, I got Mary, we're all here, the music's going like crazy, I'm getting strong. And I got up and did London. It was one of my favorite events I've done probably in the last 3 years, because there was such even a deeper sense of spirit in that room for a bunch of people that came thinking they're coming to get motivated, right? So I always pierce that. But and I get better and better. What's my primary course? God found a way to make it better. So I was able to use more of the entire universe of what this ecology I live in, this ecosystem of us together is greater than anything I could be by myself. But it's so much greater when I'm not reacting or judging, when she's not reacting and judging. And what we're able to do in essence is give each other what we both deserve.
Yes.
And then there's so little less pain. That doesn't mean something come up in the
moment.
And instead of saying, what the fuck is wrong with my relationship, you'd say, we had a bad 20 minutes. We had a bad 30 minutes. Even if you say it's all night, it probably wasn't every night. But even the argument, who's done this? In the middle of the argument, it's starting to get better, and then you fuck it up by thinking another thing you thought. Who knows what I'm talking about? Or it's getting better, and then they say something. It's another, what the fuck? Who can relate to this stuff, right? So it really wasn't even the whole night. So part of it, is learning to give a different meaning. All of this is about being the master of meaning.
Completely.
Finding the empowering meaning that takes you out of fight or flight or freeze. I got to remember freeze still exists.
And I shifted the meaning, literally let go of my shoulds and shouldn'ts, found the place in me. At that point, I was still, if I'm completely honest, another practice that I do is I notice the part in me that's unaffected. I find that place inside myself, and I go to that place, and I let go, and I'll do some inquiry. If I was really entangled, I put it on paper, but in that moment, I didn't have time. And then I just started to notice everything, and I put on music, and we had the most beautiful morning, truly my favorite morning in 17 years I've ever had on a get ready, get out the door morning for him to get on stage.
Normally, that's tightness, anxiety, concern. She's always
Fear.
worried, right? It's a pattern. The mind's always worried.
Is that because you appreciated the contrast?
Well, because in mine, I wouldn't have been able to appreciate the fact that he, was feeling so horrible. I wouldn't have been able to, even though I would have went into caregiving.
She didn't,
it would have been like,
just
honey,
let go. She made a difference.
This is what it looks like. It's like, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? Okay, well, let me call Billy. I'm not even connected. rather than actually creating a moment. We had the most beautiful, like it was the most gorgeous moment, the most gorgeous morning. I love you. That's